Caring for someone with dementia is one of the toughest journeys, but you don't have to do it alone. I'm Allison Schreier, and my experience caring for my husband inspired me to create Zinnia, a therapeutic streaming service designed to support people living with dementia and reduce caregiver stress. Our research-backed videos are engaging, easy to follow, and they help ease the daily challenges like agitation and anxiety so that you can focus on connection and joy. Available by subscription on mobile and TV apps, Zinnia makes every day a little bit easier. Go to zinniatv.com and sign up for a free trial today. Use the code RESOURCE for 15% off an annual Zinnia subscription.
And welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We are going to have a fascinating conversation as usual as we learn from people all around the world at all ages and stages of life. Stay tuned as we shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort.
Here we go. What you think about, you will bring about.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks. I am so thrilled that you can join us today. We're going to have a great conversation. We have David Sheard back with us, and last time he was on, he talked about the butterfly model, and today we're going to be talking about emotional intelligence and what that is, and then why it is so critically important when it comes to dementia care. I just want to give a shout out to Twiddles. They have some sensory products that are absolutely fantastic when someone is agitated or fidgety. I always urge people to check out Alzheimer's Speaks and all of our free educational resources we have, as well as Dementia Map, our global resource directory. So with no further ado, let's go get David. So David, I am so excited to have you on. We've been talking, it seems like, for a year to try to get this scheduled. And if it wasn't one thing with you, it was another thing with me. And so I'm just so excited to have you with us today. So thanks so much for all the work at getting this coordinated. Really, really excited to have you with us.
Equally, yeah, really, really brilliant. And I'd heard about your work for so many years from Kathy Greenblatt, who was a dear friend of yours, I know, and she strongly advocated for everything you were doing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and for you as well. So, you know, it's so interesting how you make connections through this dementia group. Everyone is so kind of open arms and anxious to meet and see what other people are doing. So I'm going to start by having you, if you don't mind, introduce yourself to our audience. I had mentioned in the intro that we had you on before about talking about the butterfly program years ago. And so why don't you go ahead and give people a little background about yourself?
Okay, so my name's David Sheard. I'm a 67-year-old man who thinks I'm 37, but that's not the case. And currently I am the only one in the UK, a professor of emotional intelligence in care at York St John University. And I've been in that role now for 3.5 years. But before that, I had a 40 plus year career in dementia care, beginning as a very green 22-year-old and running Dementia Care Matters up until 2017. And was the chief exec of that for nearly 24 years.
Thank you so much for that background, David. That's really helpful. Can you let people know if you have been personally touched by dementia in your own family or circle of friends?
Yeah, and that's a really fascinating question, because people used to say, you know, why 40 years ago did I begin working in dementia care? And it didn't really immediately sort of get articulated by me in those years. But when I look back to my father died when I was 8, my mother remarried, So I had three grandmothers, and I certainly as a teenager became aware that things happen to older women, and that there was general issues around mental health. And certainly one of the three grandmothers had dementia. And I think later, in my late 20s, began to realise it was also about a recognition of oppression and discrimination, and that one piece of information about you, i.e. a diagnosis of dementia, and that could change everything about you. And I had a real personal sort of connection to that, because I came out as a gay man at 26, and that one piece of information changed everything about how people then viewed me. And I began to realise there were sort of parallels between my own feelings about what mattered most in life and why people living with dementia weren't also receiving that. My mother then did go on to have dementia in her last few years, and she died during COVID.
Well, sorry for your loss. I know my mom, and my audience, many of them know this, but we always get new listeners. My mom lived with dementia for 30 years.
Wow.
And so, in the first 10, she was told it was just menopause. And she just kept saying, this ain't my girlfriend's menopause. It's different. But, no one would believe her. But then when we did the autopsy, it was very evident. And the neurologist said, oh my gosh, yeah, he's never seen a brain that's so atrophied or so shrunk. And he's been doing this forever. So it's interesting how we all, get touched to make a difference in this. And you're a perfect example by what you said. Is I always say what's good for dementia is good for the rest of the world. All of these things that we learn are powerful lessons. So again, thank you for sharing that. Some people might not know what emotional intelligence looks like, sounds like, feels like. So can you explain that to us?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because when I was being appointed as professor, there were discussions with the Vice Chancellor at York St John University, and the natural presumption was that I'd be called Professor of Dementia Care because of the 40-year career. But actually, when I talked with her, I said, but actually, most of my work has been about emotions at work, has been about emotional labour. I've been known for this phrase, feelings matter most. I've been known for this, abiding belief I have that people living with dementia are more feeling beings than thinking beings, and that emotions become more heightened. And so I had a preference to be titled Professor of Emotional Intelligence and Care, because I began to realise over all the years I've worked from my 20s into my 60s, that essentially I have this phrase, do you get it? Whether you're a daughter, sister, whether you're a care worker, a care manager, there was this essence of, what is it about the people who get it, in my Yorkshire accent in England, and those who don't get it, even though they may be professionally trained, even though they may be close, loving family members, there's this essence of what is getting it. And for me, I'd summarise that as emotional intelligence. It's about people who are very attuned in not just their head, but in their heart, in their gut, to why emotions matter most, and why those emotions really drive us throughout all our life, about trying to be authentic, to be real, to be connected on an emotional level. And that is really what, for me, emotional intelligence in care is. It's about being able to really reach someone else, not just in dementia care, but throughout all vulnerabilities that we have in life.
Yeah, I am right with you. I scream that whole emotional intelligence, but I kind of push it through multisensory. I say it's multisensory care, because it gets in tune and it gets people thinking outside the box and processing things differently, so that they can be more compassionate and hopefully learn to be more empathic as well, during the process there. And I love your saying feelings matter most. They do. I mean, that tells us if we're comfortable, in our skin, in our space, in the world in general, or not. And I think we live in a world right now where we all wear fake faces. There used to be a show in the States here called Stepford Wives, where
Yes.
everybody had the plastic faces on and everything was fine, but you walk in the door of the house and it's like going to explode, and there was all this drama, but everyone, had to just pretend. And what you're talking about is very authentic and very real, and justifying and acknowledging the feelings that people have and what's triggering those things. You can't, if you don't understand that they even exist, you can't figure out how to fix what is wrong.
And I think that was what I learned early on in working, supporting people living with dementia, that they don't have the filters that everybody out is using. What you see is what you get. What you see is absolutely real. And that therefore, people living with dementia are seeking that same authentic connection. And they can tell. They can tell in our eyes. They can tell in our facial expression, in an aura about us. Do we get it? Are we real or are we fake? And I think dementia care, probably more than anything in my life, has exposed how much there is fake out there versus how much is real. The people with dementia, without those filters that we expect to use in life, they're the real people.
Yeah.
And that raised then lots of questions for me about care work, which was, so people with dementia are living as whole people on a real emotional level, and yet the care is disconnected from that. And how have we created a sort of industrialized version of care that's about detached professionals rather than attached professionals?
Yeah, and that has, I think, gotten worse anyways here in the US because of all the micromanagement.
Right.
You're not allowed to feel, you're not allowed to think, you're not allowed to be creative, don't you dare sit down in that chair, and visit with somebody. You have tasks to do. And that's not all of our communities and that's not all of our workers, but it is a lot of them. And they're more scared for their job in maintaining an income than, that whole quality of care. And I think back when, I've kind of been in the people business all of my life. Even when I was 2 years old, I was just really fascinated, with people, especially my elders and how they were treated. And I was kind of always that little pushing for the underdog and trying to, make life better and things. And, it's fascinating to see, to me, how much things have changed. And I don't know if you're seeing this, but like when I was younger, and I'm about your age too, I'm 65. So when I grew up and I got into healthcare, working with the developmentally disabled, people were there because they wanted to be there. I mean, they really wanted to give back, and they were allowed to be people and have relationships, with the individual residents. I mean, they actually knew who they were, at their core. And I don't see that happening so much anymore. Right now it's, can you fog a mirror so we can hire you and get you in the door? We're not able to really screen your motives, if it's really truly to care for people at a deep, heartfelt level, like you were referring to, or do you just want a paycheck because of all the regulations? They just need numbers of people in there. And, the training, even though it's mandated and has to be done, it's like a rotating door because nobody stays very long in one place. So you lose that consistency of culture and things like that. Do you see that, over there as well?
Yeah, because obviously I worked in the UK, Ireland, Australia, Canada, and a little bit in the States. And there certainly was a commonality of the risks of disconnection in professional training, in professional regulation, in registration of care homes. But I also saw the other flip of that, which is a care sector of staff who were desperate to connect but needed permission.
Yep.
And a lot of my work was about doing life story work, not on necessarily people with dementia, but on the staff. And people saw that as controversial. They said, so you're not going to train people in dementia. You're not going to train in symptoms and causes and behaviours. You're actually saying the foundational training is each staff member is going to share their life story with their team. And you will do, and I would mirror that myself. And people found that very controversial. But I said, because it's the beginning of saying, what does it mean to be human? I want to know that in that nurse, that in that care worker, that in that person who does domestic work. I want to know what is made them who they are on the inside. What's their core humanity? What's the worst moment of their life that they never want to wake up to again that's formed them? Only when we share that in a room together are we in with a chance to, you use this phrase, to be person-centered when we go out into people's homes and their living rooms and dining rooms and bedrooms to reach people as vulnerable as us. And I have this phrase also, we're all only a flicker away. We are all, and that's been, very prevalent for me in the last 3 months with my partner with cardiac investigations. Life can be fine, and then within seconds, you're a flicker away. For me, dementia care and people living with dementia expose the need for us to be in touch with our own vulnerability. And I do not believe the sector will solve its staffing problems. I don't believe it'll solve its whole recruitment retention problems till it gets back to the core essence of what does it mean to be human and vulnerable in the staff first.
Caring for someone with dementia is one of the toughest journeys, but you don't have to do it alone. I'm Allison Schreier, and my experience caring for my husband inspired me to create Zinnia, a therapeutic streaming service designed to support people living with dementia and reduce caregiver stress. Zinnia offers research-backed videos intentionally created for people with dementia, engaging, calming, and easy to follow. Whether you need to ease agitation, create moments of joy, or make daily routines smoother, Zinnia is here to help. Family and professional caregivers use our content to turn challenges into opportunities for connection. Accessible by subscription on mobile devices and connected TVs, Zinnia is simple to use whenever you need it. Because when caregiving feels easier, life feels better. Go to zinniatv.com and sign up for a free trial today. Use the code RESOURCE for 15% off an annual Zinnia subscription.
And that's my core belief. You cannot ask staff to be something with people living with dementia that they are not being supported and given back themselves to be person-centered to them as a staff member.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree. And when you were doing that work, and I can't remember if it was through, an interview we did or through probably Kathy Greenblatt, I just found that fascinating. And to me, that just aligned so much. I mean, I didn't question it at all. It was like, oh, it's about time. That makes so much sense, because if we don't understand our own vulnerabilities and how scary life can be, how can we, understand someone else going through that? I mean, we have to get back to the root of that feeling. And, you had said, what do you never want to happen to you again? What's your greatest fear? And, and most people's fear is not being able to live independently anymore. That's a massive one. And we always wonder, why is it so hard for people to transition? Well, hello, especially when it's not their choice, and then you add dementia on top of that. That would be pretty dang scary. And I know I would be having reactions that everyone's going to call behaviors because, I'm not following suit. I'm not making their life easier, but they're not making mine easy either, doing that stuff.
And it's my experience is that care organizations seem to be scared. They would even use words like, "But you'll unleash a tsunami, David, of emotions in the staff that we won't be able to manage," in inverted commas. And I would be saying, that's not actually what happens through this training, through this connection. What happens is that staff feel so much more valued, so much more seen as a whole person themselves, that actually the connection levels go through the roof then. Real care starts being delivered. But organizations have got themselves stuck into systems and processes rather than what is in the end the outcome that we're after. The outcome we're after in care work is to connect, to reach, to be there. And, in Canada, you ask about what I found. I did a documentary with the Toronto Star in Canada in 2015 called The Fix. And we still seem to be struggling to really nail what is the fix in the care sector. And I think the fix is at the most senior level. It's not actually with care workers, nurses, team leaders. The fix is at director, board level, for them to start fixing what is this organization really about.
And it's interesting, just the word fix. I do a lot of support groups, and I say, we're not here to help you fix things. We're here to help you support things and to help you feel confident in the calls you're making and, your reactions to what's going on. And I'm even doing a program for a company. And one of my questions for the synopsis that we were going to cover is, why does that behavior bother you? Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, I don't know if we can say that. And I'm like, yeah, we need to get down to why don't they like that reaction? I don't like the word behavior to begin with. I like to have it called behavior or, a reaction or a clue. We have to change that mindset of why we're doing what we're doing. And then how are we reacting? What is our trigger? Some people react to the chalk on a chalkboard and other people don't at all. So just because you or I feel one way or have a reaction doesn't mean everyone else is going to, but we just assume everyone does. And then we point the finger, well, it's got to be them because it can't be me type deal, because I'm the staff, or I'm the family member. They're the one that's sick. And, to me, it's been fascinating. And you had touched on this earlier, how even if we have kind of that plastic smile face on and we're having a really rough day, they're picking up on our anxiety and they're mirroring it back through all these other angles. And people are like, well, they can't do that. And it's like, yeah, it's a very evident. And, when I did some interviews that I do on dementia chats with people living with dementia, they explained their heightened sensitivity to all those other senses, kind of like being blind. When you're blind, your other senses, step up and help you survive. And they said that's why we need you to look at us when you talk to us, because we're reading your facial expressions and your eyes. And, are you fidgety? Are your arms crossed? What's your tone of voice? And to me, this whole deal with dementia, this emotional intelligence is teaching people to understand their own reactions and others and not judge it. Just know it has an effect on the conversation. And then, it helps us, I hate to say control, but because we can't really control, but we can adjust to the outcomes, both in ourselves and in someone else, once we even realize we use those modes of communication. But I'm shocked, and I don't know if you get this from staff and communities, that they don't really even think that's, something that they have to even deal with. I mean, it's like it's so rarely talked about.
I think it's because, in my experience, you commented on the word behaviour, which equally I would want banned, because I would say it's an expression, it's an emotional distress signal, whatever. But the sector got locked in a model that was all about behaviour. Behavior equals behavior management, equals behavior training courses, and all of that dementia care tells me a huge amount. You've still got dementia trainers advertising behavior management courses. You've got care homes wanting you to go in and provide assistance, guidance, support on behavior management. They're still using loads of behavior tools. And it's like, come on, imagine if we chose a partner in life who was like that with us. Well, I'll just have to look at my behavior management with you now. Imagine if we said that all the time to our children or adult children. It's just not real life to reduce our expression and our communication to the language of behaviors. And so I think that's the other problem the sector has, is that there's a huge industry and a huge massive number of professionals building careers on behavior, the word behavior. And there are not so many people saying, no, it's about emotional intelligence. It's actually about really getting to the core. I think I sent you recently, I've just written a chapter called The Search, and I would say that every inverted commas behavior is a search. Like we all do in life, we all search to make sense of ourselves, our lives, the people we love, the people around us. And people with dementia, even more, I think, engage in the search because of what you said, because of their being more heightened in their emotional connections. Their search is more heightened, not their behaviors.
Yeah. Well, and I think behaviors is real simple because it points a finger at them. They're the problem.
Yeah.
We're not the problem. Or, a pharma wants behavior because they have behavior management medications, even though, we're now training people not to use those. We're really not training people, in my opinion, overly well at, like you said, emotional intelligence and multisensory skills and just that humanness of why we all react, because we all constantly react all day long. And we don't put ourselves in that seat of, gosh, what would that be like to be told over and over that you have a behavior? That's not a compliment. Hello, guys, and you are going to find what you're looking for. So if you're looking for a behavior, you're going to find it and you're going to note that it's negative and that it needs to be changed. But if you're looking at it as a clue or an expression, then you really go into that. Well, why do they feel that way? Why, what's causing that reaction? And then we put on our investigative hats. The other one just wants to slam it down and just get rid of it, but not understand the why at all behind it. And that's not sustainable, in my opinion.
No, and I think that the word that we both mutually dislike, behaviour, is an interesting one in relation to staff reactions and feelings, because I think lots of us would have a expression from someone that we fear. We might in our lives fear, as a gay man, I used to fear that I would get gay bashed, be assaulted or whatever for just being who I was. And there'd be scenarios I'd avoid to think, I won't go to that area of the city, or I won't be out at that time of night. And that's something women particularly are very familiar with, having designed their lives to avoid attack, etc. And I think there are people who are frightened of a whole range of emotions that could be expressed by other people. But we don't support staff to say, what would you fear? How do you design your life to avoid these expressions? Because you can't avoid them now you're coming into dementia care, because people, I've always used the traffic light analogy, and I've said, people haven't got the amber light coming on to process. We feel, process, and then react, but people can't always do it in that sequential way. So yes, all these expressions in dementia are going to happen that we either avoid in life, in schools, in the street, in supermarkets, everywhere. There's potential for them to occur. And I think we need to understand in staff their fears as well. What would be the shift they would dread? Why? What button does it touch in their personal life? And I think it's about, that's the sort of approach to behaviours, in inverted commas, I'd want us to talk with staff about. Not why is this person with dementia got a behaviour, more what is it in you that creates the fear, the anxiety, the reaction? What support do you need to be able to reach this person, to be able to interpret it, to be able to see it for not what it is that you're frightened of? There's a lot of work that's not done, and so you'll know more as much as me. This whole word person-centered care has become an institutionalized word, but real person-centered care for staff is when they receive what they're being expected to give on their shift. And that's what I mean by emotional intelligence. We've got an imbalance. And while staff are not being filled up and their emotional intelligence being sort of seen as an amazing gift in them, they're going to clamp it down, hide it, suppress it, and go out onto the shift trying to be what they think employers want. And we need to change that whole language and dialogue. But that's massive. It's massive.
Well, and not only think what people want, but what they're told they're supposed to be like too. Yeah. We need more role models with that, and more empathy with all of this stuff. And to me, it's just so critical. I don't like. In fact, I can say viscerally, I hate the term person-centered care, because I think it's overstated and underdelivered, and I get a lot of pushback, and I'm like, it says nothing about the relationship. I would much rather have us call it relation-based care, because it gives people that time to take a breath and enjoy somebody. This whole person-centered, I think, sometimes gets swallowed up, and I know the intent isn't this, but that I have to care for you. It's kind of like the word caregiver to me. We set it up to say we're giving it all away. I'm going to help you and I'm going to support you, but you're not going to do anything for me. You're not going to, you're not. And that's not what this is about. I mean, really good care is two-way care. And getting to know one another and feeling safe in that process of sharing. And for people to, I find it funny too, in so many communities that we, if someone has an emotion that we're not comfortable with, well, then it's a behavior. But it's like, it's kind of like, well, when someone dies, that's uncomfortable, but that's not going to stop death. Hello, that's still going to occur. And so, I love this conversation, because I just think it is absolutely critical for people to understand. For those of you that are just tuning in, we are talking with David Sheard out of the UK, and he has been a disruptor in the dementia care industry for 44 years. And, he has a saying that feelings matter most. And we are kind of diving deep on emotional intelligence and what that means, and how you leverage that to really care for others better. But I think you also care for yourself better when you know that as well. David can be reached. We'll have all his contact information in the show notes, for you to be able to find him. He's also, a professor, the only one out there that is a professor of emotional intelligence in the care industry, for which I think is fascinating and I think is highly needed. I would love to see that expanded all around the world, because I just think it's such a critical piece. I do want to give just a shout out to Q for Good before I pull David back into the conversation. Q for Good is a webmaster, and they are my webmaster, and I do this to them. They are absolutely fantastic, and they are really a socially conscious group, and they communicate so well. Even though I'm in the US and they're over in India, our communication is excellent. I mean, and they really understand, and they read emotions. I know through Zoom because I'm pulling my hair out and ready to scream, and they just are right there to calm me down and say, well, we're here to get you through this, and we're going to take care of this stuff for you. And that's massively huge. And I had websites and all technology been involved with for many, many, many decades. And I've never seen a company like this. So if you're looking for a webmaster, check out Q for Good. And if you mention, my name or Alzheimer's Speaks, you can even get a 10% discount. But I really heartfelt, not a sales pitch. I just love these guys. They're fantastic. And I love what David's, is doing in his work as well. So I want to pull you back in, David, and talk about your purpose in terms of disrupting long-term care. And, I know you've been doing that all along. How have you been received? I would imagine there's been some good, some bad, and some ugly.
Yeah.
How everything's been perceived over the years.
You summed it up into those three responses. The good are the amazing, utterly amazing dementia home care managers who are just live and breathe it, want to be it. I've been it before I've even met them, and they are just relieved to be part of a movement where they don't feel alone, and they have queues of people at the door wanting to live there, wanting to work there. And so there is that part of the sector that is just utterly amazing, and you feel you're part of a huge community of people who get it, in my words. There are then the group I describe as the learners. That they'll listen, they'll study, they'll think about it, but they're puzzled by it, because they are well consumed into the traditional sector. They, somewhere in their gut, know it probably ain't quite right, but they're not wanting to quite step out and fly that flag. And so they dabble on the edges of it. And it's like, well, yes, I do want to know more about emotional intelligence in care. I do want to know about emotions at work. I do want to shift to more emotion-centered care. But I still have all the regulation, David, and I still have all my registration requirements and all the commissioning requirements, and they're still lost in management process. But they sort of learn and dabble on the edges. And then there are fighters in the care sector, and they fight dirty, mean, and hard. And they will do anything to try and take you down. So they will, they'll defend all the things I'm against. So, I'm against uniforms, and yet you'd have thought I was, fighting the most horrendous thing to get rid of. I'm against all the them and us features, so I'm against staff stood at, drug carts, drug trolleys, dishing out medication instead of it being private in people's bathrooms. I'm against staff watching people eat instead of sharing a meal. I'm against empty clinical environments where they argue that they can't have all the stuff of life because it's not safe and because of infection control. COVID was an absolute disaster for the sector because the fighters started winning hard again. It was a gift to them. Yes, we can bring back all the old systems, all the old infection control, and now we can justify it all. So it's the sadness of my 44 years would be that it wasn't easy to create a movement that became mainstream, and I don't believe it has become mainstream. And that was the sadness that I feel as and when I leave, that I'll leave with, that I'm thrilled to meet the passionate followers, the passionate leaders in this, engaged to meet people who want to think about it. But the fighters still win. The fighters still win. They win on their hotel model of dementia care, building hotels instead of homes. They win on keeping the institutionalization, but dressing it up fancy to justify it. And I have to say, the old school detached nursing profession, those who are still part of that, and they win because they still win in bringing in all the clinical control. And so I'm still not clear at the age I now am, what will ever tip the sector in sufficient scale and numbers for what you and I believe, Laurie, to be the main core of care, because it still isn't. And I'm not clear. The sector is so big business, and it is so run by people who might somewhere, they've got to be running it somewhere inside for the right reason, but they got lost way along the way, and they don't even want to discover that they've got lost. And I'm not clear what will shift it, because inspectors of care homes don't shift the cultures. Commissioners of care homes don't shift the cultures. I actually believe what it will take is a massive, in every country, a massive national family movement. Because families contact me in every country saying, I don't want this, David. I don't want any of it for the person I love, but it's the only choice I've got. And somehow families are left with a like it or lump it scenario. But no one has politicised them enough to say, let's get out on the streets, let's fight, and let's actually start to say, this is not actually what we want for our families. It's not what we want for people with support and love. It's not what we want for ourselves. Somehow we're all still sort of oppressed and not feeling that we are the care sector and we can change it. And families don't feel that. And I'm not convinced anymore that the care sector will take the mantle. I think it will require a political family movement. In the same way of civil rights movement, in the same way of any discriminatory body has had to fight, whether it's gay men, whether it's for women's rights, in the end, the core majority in society never do it for you. Actually, the minority has to fight and fight hard. But it's at a time of life when people are not feeling that they're ready for the fact they're exhausted with caregiving. They're exhausted with worry and anxiety and money troubles. We need the generations, we need the people from 30 to 60 to be taking the fight on. By the time you're in your 60s, looking after a mum or sister or dad in their 80s or 90s, you're fighting to just get through the day. You can't take on a big national system and movement. Younger people need to realise this is coming for them and that they want to change it.
Caring for someone with dementia is one of the toughest journeys, but you don't have to do it alone. I'm Allison Schreier, and my experience caring for my husband inspired me to create Zinnia, a therapeutic streaming service designed to support people living with dementia and reduce caregiver stress. Zinnia offers research-backed videos intentionally created for people with dementia, engaging, calming, and easy to follow. Whether you need to ease agitation, create moments of joy, or make daily routines smoother, Zinnia is here to help. Family and professional caregivers use our content to turn challenges into opportunities for connection. Accessible by subscription on mobile devices and connected TVs, Zinnia is simple to use whenever you need it. Because when caregiving feels easier, life feels better. Go to zinniatv.com and sign up for a free trial today. Use the code RESOURCE for 15% off an annual Zinnia subscription.
I stepped into this space in 2009, and I stepped in because the voice of the person diagnosed wasn't heard at all. They weren't even part of the conversation. And the family members were, they were listened to, and then they were like brushed out the door and forgotten about, so they had enough empathy to like, okay, this person really needs 5 minutes of my ear bent, but I'm not going to do anything with it because I'm the expert, and so I found that really interesting. But we're seeing more voices of people, younger onset living, with dementia. that are changing the face of what it is. I think we're seeing more intergenerational care where, when my grandma had it, which the family didn't even know she did, or even my mom, most families weren't allowing kids to care. It was just the adults. Oh, we're not going to burden you with that. You're not going to burden somebody with a major health issue and have a teaching moment that, this is what happens. Because I know I was told this is just what happens when somebody gets older. That was my explanation, with my great aunt when she was in the nursing home and forgot me. And I was devastated, just devastated. And that's all I got was, this is just part of life. And, we've created Dementia Map to try to pull those passionate voices together, which is a global resource directory. And I purposely did not buy lists because I'm not putting people in that don't get it, that aren't going to really respond, that are just chasing the dollar. That's not who I want to refer people to. I want people who are solid, and not that people aren't making money, for their services. They've got a right to do that. But I want people that get it, and not that they can't hire, a goofball staff person once in a while. You can't control that out there. Those things are going to happen, but we have to stop blaming everyone else and take, an active position. I see families, and I hear this all the time through my support groups, how they are constantly bringing information to the doctors. They're not getting resources from the doctors. They're bringing them. Like, why didn't you tell me about this? Tell it to the next person. And again, that still hasn't transitioned. I am kind of hopeful in a really strange way, given our political environment here and the slashing of budgets, that is going to make people step up and pull together and collaborate. And, I hate to see that coming out of deep fear, but I think on the other hand, what the rest of us are doing is giving great hope in terms of being able to find the joy and approaching things in different ways and kind of getting out of that metal mode that says this is how it has to be done. And giving permission to empower them to try different things. This is trial and error, folks. Everybody is different. All, even in your own family. Yeah, you were raised maybe by the same parents, but you were all treated different. You all had different friends. You had different experiences in life. So you're different. And that by looking at your friends and your family members of, how they're going to react is different. It's kind of like that police officer that, takes a report and everybody saw the same thing, but nobody saw the same thing. And that is like a given, but we're not applying it to how we care. And what is the cause of that? What's the whys behind why are we perceiving things different? And so I loved when you said earlier, when I was saying, a lot of our staff is micromanaged, but you said there's a lot of them that are desperate to care and really connect. And that is so true. And for so many of them, we scare them out of the industry when they're not given the ability to do that. And that's horrible. Or you see the toxic person, entering the community, and they stay and chase everybody else out. Management isn't even recognizing what is happening at a lot of levels. And it affects, it affects more than just the person with dementia. It affects those families. It affects the team. And I mean, everything each one of us does has this ripple effect. And, we need to understand that at a much deeper level and take the seriousness of our impact of one person and what we can do, and I mean, I'm sure you've seen it too, just somebody walking down the hall, not looking at their phone or their iPad, but actually engaging and saying, hi, how you doing? Or, blah, blah, whatever it is, seconds of time but life changing for how you just made someone's day go. And then, as you see that kind of ripple out, the whole culture changes, so the culture can be changed. And I think everyone thinks that it has to be extremely expensive and ineffective and all these pushbacks. But again, when you're going after the emotions, the trainer can deal with the emotions of the staff and the pushback. They know the questions to ask. And there's so much, like you said, there's so much fear in that. Or are we going to get sued? We're asking too personal of information. But again, there's a reason behind it. And it's shifting that mindset to a heart set, of what truly matters and how do we care comfortably for everybody.
And there is hope, isn't there? Because, I began age 22, arriving into a psychiatric hospital, bare corridors, to a locked door with faces pressed at the glass panel, and realizing, oh goodness, this is my first day in my first job. And these faces are people with dementia. And the door was opened, only ajar for me to get in. And there were 2 rows of iron beds, people naked, people screaming. And my stomach lurched, where the staff didn't seem to think there was anything unusual going on. And my stomach was lurching like, oh my God, what on earth is this? How is this still being delivered by, yes, still people who were doing their best and in their way thought they were caring 45 years ago. And so the world, has moved on. People are still doing their best, like those staff were in that hospital ward, but it wasn't good enough. And it seems to be a problem in the care sector to say it's not good enough. People don't like that. So whilst I would say, yes, there's hope, because care has transitioned over those 45 years, and there will be more transition. But I think, the disruptor element of me says that the pace isn't fast enough, the scale isn't fast enough. And, private equity have got a stranglehold on the sector. And something has to be done to make this commercially, I loved your word, heart set. I think if I was to do all my life again, I wouldn't do it quite the same. I thought, talking as I do and like you do, Laurie, that you could change hearts and minds on a scale that would actually create a big enough movement. In my last 10 years, I realized that people thought I was over-emotional, too much about all that stuff in the heart and the gut and not in the head, too much about anti-behavior, anti-this, anti-uniform, just about creating friendship, community, relationship. And I realized that the language wouldn't work on the scale we needed, that I needed to talk business. I needed to talk, this will create a queue out the door of people who want to work there. This will create a queue of people living with dementia and their families who want to actually access and live here. This will create good business. And so I think also we've to try and win the hard sort of discussion as well as the soft one.
No, I agree. You've got to pitch to the budget and that whole scenario in terms of how people are framing it, because they need to get out of their offices and actually visit on a realistic level, not tour a building where everyone's, oh, they're here, and then they are doing things different, and they're hiding if there is a reaction or an expression, or they're trying to make everything look smooth. It's like, life wasn't smooth before dementia. Why do you think it's going to be now? We're not being real. Oh gosh, David, I love this conversation with you. It's so powerful, and hopefully we've got, we're wakening people up to there are other avenues and other approaches that can be implemented and can make a huge difference, like you said, not only in the residents and the families, but the staff wanting to stay in a culture that's healthy. So many of our work cultures are not healthy. They're toxic. And you don't want somebody caring for people who's scared they're going to lose their job, and they're paranoid and they're looking over their shoulder. You want people who are fully engaged in there, and understand the importance of their work. And we need to value that work. I think one of the sectors we need to train is the regulators and the legislators, that are making these rules, so that they really truly understand what's what. It drove me nuts when, this is a while back, people would say, well, there's no cameras, you can't take pictures, because one bad apple took a bad picture. And I get we have to protect people, but it's like, well, now we can't take pictures of joy. We can't send those to families. We're only calling when they fell or something got stolen, or, we screwed up. That's not a healthy relationship. No. And that's not real. We need to be able to appreciate one another. So thank you so much. Any last wrap up that you have here? We just have a couple of minutes.
I think a little advert, but it's an advert for something free. The publication that I'm involved in is coming out in the UK, which is coming out in the next couple of weeks. It's published by the National Dementia Accreditation Scheme. There is a National Dementia Accreditation Scheme for care homes, and the publication is called Waiting for the Bus. And in it, I write 2 chapters, and they're very much about people living with dementia search, and also the discovery behind the search. And I think away from the large institutions and the money problems and the politics, you've also said very much, Laurie, that in the end you can change a moment. And if somebody out there listening to this wants to change the moment, then I'd say, do get a copy of Waiting for the Bus. It's free. It'll be made available. You can get it through myself or the national scheme. The author is Sam Dondi Smith. You find him on LinkedIn as well. At the end of the day, we all of us across the whole sector want the same thing. Surely we just want someone when we have dementia, and when, if I have dementia or you, we just want someone to reach us, connect with us, to be with us.
Exactly. And, we could be living there next. So how do you want to be treated? If nothing else, be selfish in that motivation, if that's what it's going to take to get you on board. With a change in course here, it's important that we are dignified in how we care. And so I ask our audience, as always, be a giver of hope. Join our movement, help share resources, share your stories, and give hope to one another. There are so many cool things going on, like what David is doing. And I want to get from you, if you can email me the author of Waiting for the Bus, that would be great, so that I can put that out there for others. Again, we will have all of the contact information in the notes for you, from website and email, and he's on X and LinkedIn. And we just want to connect people. We want to show that there's opportunities for all of us to care better, to live better, and live more fully. So thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Attention seniors, are you looking for a community that offers incredible benefits and stands up for your values? Look no further than AMAC. With an AMAC membership, you'll enjoy exclusive discounts on insurance, travel, dining, and shopping. Stay informed with 6 issues a year of our award-winning AMAC magazine, delivering trusted news and valuable insights. But that's not all. AMAC is committed to defending America's future by directly bringing the voices of our more than 2 million members to our elected officials. Join a community that cares about your needs and your values. For a limited time, we're offering a 1-year membership for only $1. Yes, just $1 for a year of incredible benefits and advocacy. Don't wait. Take advantage of this special offer and join AMAC today. Visit amac.us/join now. That's amac.us/join now.